As a young boy in the early 1960s, I discovered the thrill of the hunt, staring up at this plastic carousel that would sit on the counter at the dime store, showcasing bright colored 2- and 3-inch cars and trucks, from race cars to bulldozers. I would tell the clerk the number of the toy I wanted that day, and she would reach under the counter to retrieve the little blue and yellow cardboard boxes that held the newest addition to my toy collection. I spent many hours of my early childhood in a backyard sandbox playing with these little toy matchbox cars. I would make them plow through and under the soft sand. And my dad would often tell me to make sure to bring them into the house when the play day was done. A few years later, in 1968, a new kind of toy car was introduced. Hot Wheels, including the Beatnik Bandit, the Silhouette, and the classic 1932 Ford Vicky. My play hours now were filled by racing my collection against the cars owned by my best friend, Billy Birch. It didn't matter that the same cars won every tournament. Disappointingly, it was always the big, bulky, heavy ones that gravity propelled down the bright orange track to the winner's circle. Only in that world would a school bus beat a hot rod. But we had to keep trying. Fast forward a few more years to high school graduation. My dad presented me with wooden display cases he built himself, filled with a couple of hundred of my long-forgotten Matchbox and Hot Wheels. Most of the Hot Wheels sparkled just as much as the days when I raced them against Billy Birch. And the Matchbox cars were ones I hadn't seen since my sandbox days. That day, I learned my dad would sift through the sand at night and confiscate the ones that I carelessly abandoned. It would be a long time before I would see those again. Those display boxes filled with my wheeled memories have hung in my home for the past 45 years. One year, my daughter, Megan, who had been told emphatically not to play with the cars in the display case her grandpa made, took all 88 of the Hot Wheels from their little compartments. But I couldn't be mad, for she had put them back, but rearranging them all according to color, creating a beautiful rainbow of souped up oranges and reds and greens and blues and golds. 25 years later, they remain in the box just like that. Today, when I walk by my collection of cars acquired a half century ago, I see my dad rescuing my neglected toys from the sandbox. I see my childhood friend as we raced those very cars. I see the wooden display cabinets my dad crafted and presented to me as I was leaving the nest. And I see my precocious little girl putting her creative stamp on my childhood. I am happy to say my daughter has made it clear there is one thing above all my other possessions that she wants to inherit and remember me by: my toy car collection.
I am not an overly sentimental person, particularly when it comes to keepsakes and tchotchkes. That does not mean I haven't kept anything of sentimental value, but I guarantee I've thrown out far more than I have kept. But sitting on my shelf in the basement is a small sculpture of an emaciated horse. An old nag was the term that would have accurately described it a half a century ago, when people still associated the word nag with a horse. As a sculpture, the kindest word that I would describe it would be solid. After that, the adjectives would be far less kind. But I've kept it for over 60 some odd years, and it has come with me through at least 9 different household moves. And it has done this for only one reason. It is a touchstone to my long departed Grandpa Poby, a very sweet man who emigrated from Russia and without which I would obviously not exist. I never particularly liked it, but when Grandpa Max saw me admiring it all those years ago, he immediately thought I should have it. So it came into my possession, and I carried it close to my body all the way on the train from Philadelphia to Iowa, and proudly displayed it in my room. Later, when Grandpa came to visit once, and he saw it in my room, his twinkling little eyes shone twice as bright. And that's all I needed to see, to know that ugly old nag would be with me forever. It is not prominently displayed in our house, thanks to my wife, but it is still not relegated to the storage boxes that other objects have been faded to, simply because even after all these years, I remember I made my grandpa happy, and that is the keepsake and treasure that surrounds my heart.
I'll admit it. I have a problem. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to mid-century modern dinnerware. And the person who got me addicted? This guy. My father. When he got me my first set of Iroquois by Russell Wright dishes, I didn't think much of it. I mean, after all, what's the harm? I needed dishes, and these were nice. Here's the harm. It wasn't a full set. Pretty soon I'm scouring eBay. I'm looking for different pieces and different colors. I mean, I am hooked. I didn't realize it was a gateway drug. Next, my dad got me a set of Franciscan Autumn. Now I'm collecting for 2 sets. I'm scouring antique stores. I'm bottom checking every dish that I come across, looking for that manufacturer's stamp. Soon I moved on to the hard stuff. And I mean hard to find. I moved on to this Franciscan starburst pattern. Now I've got 3 sets. I've got the Dish Jones nagging at me every day. Soon I find myself in an antique store in Des Moines. I find half a set of Red Wing Capistrano. I can't let that go. So I buy it. And on it goes. And my dealer, my dad, he's encouraging this behavior. You know what I got for Christmas last year? Red Wing Marrowleaf. But I got him some Ben Seibel Harvest. So I guess now we're even, Dad. The worst part of this addiction, you don't just collect dishes. No, you start collecting something else. Books. Books. So you can figure out what pieces you don't have. Books about dishes. They start filling up your house. Pretty soon your friends get worried. They want to talk to you. Maybe you invite them over for dinner. Maybe you get out your best dishes. Maybe you talk to them for about an hour about the dishes from which you're eating. Maybe they beat a hasty retreat from your house. Maybe that really did happen. This is my daughter. It's now a family addiction. My dad got her a set of Red Wing Adobe Stone as a gift. Now she's hooked too. So if you're thinking about maybe trying to collect some American dinnerware, spread your gay wings perhaps, I caution you with this. This is your brain. This is your brain in a tickled pink cereal bowl. Any questions?
There's a clock on my mantle. It's old wind-up pendulum-style kitchen clock with gold trim on the pendulum window and 2 colors on the dial and a large oak case and bells that ring in the quarter and the half and the hour. I first ran into it at my friend Soph's house. When I married his daughter, it came to our house. I noticed it had a loud, long, constant, well-regulated tick. Before it was at Soph's house, it was at Alma's house, his mother. She got it when she got married, before she left Denmark at the turn of the 20th century. But I don't know if it was new then or not. The clock was at Alma's through World War I, the loss of her husband, the illness of her son, the Great Depression, her son joining the military, and during that time going to World War II. It ticked in her parlor through the Korean War, several bushfires, and just before the space race. In So's house, it ticked through the 60s, Vietnam, the sexual revolution, the removal of a president, ticking on the shelf, being wound on Sundays and lasting through the week. It gave not very much trouble. On the occasional oiling, go a trip to the clock doctor. The first time we returned to stay at Soph's house, they had us sleep in the living room on a fold-out couch with the clock. The clock ticked all night, and I dreamed of building a plexiglass box around the clock to stop the ticking. I didn't complain. I knew I would have to get used to it. Well, it moved into our house shortly thereafter. It ticked through 4 moves, multiple jobs, 2 children now fully grown, and the current pandemic, and hopefully whatever will happen in the next few years. Now our children don't want the clock, or so they have said, but it's not time to give them the clock, not yet. We have grandchildren though, and we are hoping that they will want the clock when the time comes, as it must, comes as it has before for the other owners of the clock. Thank you.
Since I was a little boy, I was fascinated by these scraps of cloth that went around my dad's neck. So I've begun to collect ties. You could say I'm in over my head. And the best part about it is that my girlfriend tells me I'm very naughty. I don't know where she gets it, but I love ties. As a matter of fact, I have 4 in hand right here. And sometimes I get a little hot under the collar as I'm chasing these because ties are the coolest things. Well, you can't see this right now, but if you were to go into my closet, you would see them all separated by colors. I guess you could say they were all apartheid. The big picture for me is this. Every time I see a Garcia tie, I have to buy it. I probably have 70 or more Jerry Garcia ties. And then there are the other ties. And again, I like them, but they're not as cool as these. I will never, ever turn down the opportunity to look at a tie or buy a tie. Some people would say I have a bad rep about ties. I don't know, but I've got to go right now because it's time for me to tie one on.
Hello, my name is Tom Moore, and I've been asked to tell you about an object that's very special to me. The problem is I'm 1,200 miles away from home and I don't have it with me, so I'll just have to tell you about it. This object was made by my father, who was born legally blind, but that didn't slow him down for a bit. He could make or fix just about anything you can imagine. When I was 10 years old, he decided to make a Pennsylvania, Kentucky flintlock rifle. Now, this is a very old style of rifle. It's very, very long, and it has a beautiful maple stock from end to end with inlaid brass patch box and escutcheons that help hold the barrel in. It's an old style rifle where you have to pour the powder down the barrel and then wrap the ball in a piece of cloth and push it all the way down. Then you open up the lock and put in a pinch of priming powder and close it and cock the hammer, and then you're ready to shoot. We had so much fun with that gun that it inspired me to be interested in muzzle loading rifles for the rest of my life. A long time ago, I started researching Iowa gun makers. And I thought when I started the project, oh, I might be able to find 125 or 150 names of gun makers in Iowa. When I was through with the project after about 20 years, I had found over 760 names of Iowa gun makers in the 1800s. And I found lots of interesting Iowa history to go along with it. So oddly enough, I decided to write a book. And it is entitled Iowa Gun Makers in the 1800s. If you're interested in old Iowa history or the history of gun making in general, you can order a copy from me at iowagun@mchsi.com. That's Iowagun, IOWAGUN, at mchsi.com. Thanks for listening.
I am not a tacky woman. I just want to be clear about that. But there was a time when I was having a tough time and I was wandering. I spent my weekends just wandering from place to place. I wasn't really shopping, but I was looking for whatever. A friend suggested to me that I should collect salt and pepper shakers. Yeah, that didn't really appeal to me a whole lot until she sent me 2 sumo wrestlers, one cradled in the other. And there was something about them. They just made me laugh. I kept them out on the coffee table because every time I went by, it just made me giggle. But they were tacky. Oh, so tacky. But it got me started. And then, so the next thing I bought were these cute little red toenailed feet that say Ozark Swimmer. And they are salt and pepper shakers. But can you imagine passing them to your boss and saying, here? Ew, what would they think of you? And then people started giving me salt and pepper shakers, and someone gave me these guys. I'm pretty sure they're not politically correct. My younger brother got onto this tacky salt and pepper shaker thing, and so he sent me these lovely sort of corncob pipes, courtesy of the Indiana Toll Road. Again, I just cannot imagine trying to make a good impression on someone who mattered to me, whose respect I was hoping for, with duck salt and pepper shakers. I mean, but you have to admit, they're so stupid. They kind of make you want to laugh. So that's how it got started. I got a few more, and in particular, some of them got really odd, strange. These 2 in particular, we call these the psycho squirrels. Look at them. Can you imagine getting up at breakfast and looking at these guys? They kind of look like something out of a horror movie, like they might kill you in your sleep. Well, my life changed. I got happier. I met Marv, my current husband, and at first he was really pretty accepting of my obsession with salt and pepper shakers. And he brought me these. Now, doesn't that say to you that he thinks I'm his cute little Chiquita banana? I thought so. Then we got married. And when we got married, lo and behold, 2 sets of salt and pepper shakers were in the gifts. The first pair is this couple. Now, look closely. Do they look happy to you? I really think that they look like they woke and weren't sure that they had met. And there was another, actually, has a practical and another message. First, I may be chubby now, but I didn't look like this when I got married. And look at his face. He looks like he can't quite decide whether he's happy or not. Of course, he is supposed to be holding her, which is the other message. Salt and pepper should always be married. So if someone asks you, from an etiquette standpoint, if someone asks you to pass the salt and pepper, you always pass both. Now, salt and pepper shakers haven't been around forever. They were invented in 1853 by John Landis Mason, the fellow who gave us the mason jar. But they didn't become popular until the 1920s when Morton Salt figured out that they put something, I think it's magnesium, in it, the salt wouldn't clog. It took off then. During the Depression, it was easy, cheap to manufacture lots of different shapes and sizes of salt and pepper shakers, and there was something that poor people could afford. And there you have it. So now we have salt and pepper shakers, and I have sophisticated ones, and then I have the ones that I hide in the box downstairs. But I have to tell you that I like these guys. Now, this is the stupidest thing ever. Have you ever seen a pig on a scooter? Ever? No, of course not. But they do embody tacky salt and pepper shakers, and they still make me laugh.
'60s TV show Bewitched, Aunt Claire collected doorknobs. I thought this was dumb. That summer, I'm at Grandma's farm, and in the tool shed, I find a wooden crate full of doorknobs. Next to it was another wooden crate full of doorknobs, all carefully wrapped in old newspaper. I did ask Grandma if by chance I had an Aunt Claire. She said no, but I did spend the rest of the summer wiggling my nose and nodding my head and hoping magic was real. As a teenager, my Aunt Kathy gave me a book called The Hudson Bay Company, and it was a lot about trappers in the fur trade. One of the things they mentioned was a trapper's scale. 20 more years goes by and eBay was invented. Now I don't have to walk through antique stores. I can actually sit at home and type in. And I typed in a trapper's scale, and that was the first time in my life I ever saw a trapper's scale. This is what it looks like. If you hang it from that ring and hold things on this hook, it weighs upwards of 350 pounds. But if you hang it on this ring and pull on the small hook, it weighs up to 80 pounds, and that little needle deflects. It was convenient, it was small, it was lightweight in comparison, it traveled well. I thought that was ingenious. I love the age of it, I love the engineering, I love the design, and I love that on eBay could buy one for $43 plus shipping. But what I maybe didn't love was when I bought my second, third, and fourth. And then somehow eBay is able to expand your ideas. And so they started selling me other spring scales, like this one, which measures maybe 30 pounds. And spring scales are not that accurate because the temperature of the spring determines how accurate they are. Balance scales. If you want a real scale, you have to have a balance scale. And I personally love this balance scale because this is a scale model of a scale. And I do own this scale that's in full scale. And then I own about 31 others in various shapes, sizes, and designs. Now, when you start collecting things that are 100 years old and belong to people who have long since passed away, you begin collecting other things. And some of those things might be an hourglass, because eBay will let you buy whatever you want. Or this very old camera, which I like because, as I recall, we had one of these when I was a kid. And I love scales. I love the engineering of them. I love the way that they feel, and they're made of cast iron. They're durable. All of these things I appreciate. But I realized I needed to find the AA meeting for eBay when I was trying to figure out how to get a half a ton of cast iron scales into the back of my pickup truck that could not be pulled off the loading dock. And I'm not telling you that I have bought every antique online. I've bought quite a few. But I still do like going through antique stores and just seeing what's there. And occasionally, every so often, I may or may not have looked at a few doorknobs on eBay and wiggled my nose and hoped that magic was real.
I remember when I was a kid, in my mom's desk, she had a gray metal box. And when I opened that box, I was transported back to an earlier world. The box was filled with pictures, pictures of my great-grandparents and grandparents who I never knew. Pictures of my mom and dad's early childhoods. Pictures of me and my brothers and sisters when we were younger. I loved looking at these pictures. They reminded me that my parents were once kids. I was too. But while having old pictures fascinate me, it's frustrating having old pictures of people and not having a clue who they are. That connection is lost. It's just another old picture. One of the blessings that my mother did for us before dividing up those pictures was to write the names of everybody she could identify on the back. It allowed me to recognize the faces in other pictures that were not identified. Now, my uncle Orville was an avid photographer, and I ended up with a collection of his negatives. Not having a clue what I had, I selected the one that looked interesting and had it printed. There's a group picture of my grandfather and uncles and my dad when he was about 19. I had never seen a picture of him at this age. There were two other pictures in the series. And through my uncle's eye, we now have a great collection of family get-togethers through a long period of time. And today's technology has allowed me to scan these pictures and through a photo editing program to add text identifying who's in those pictures. That valuable information will not be lost as long as the prints and the originals survive. So identify who you know who you have in your pictures, write their names on the back. Pictures allow me to time and again see my mom and dad, aunts and uncles grow from little children through adulthood. To remember those who I'd never had the chance to know, and while mom and dad and all her siblings are now gone, they live on and are not forgotten through their pictures. And just because they are identified now by names on the back or in the digital images, in 100 years, my great grandkids will be able to know just a little bit more about my parents, me, and their other ancestors and what they look like.